I'm going to get to your bill in a moment, but give me your reaction to this law. What really concerns so many people is that this law seems to be sending a warning to the United States and other countries because several parts of the security legislation take aim at the perceived role of foreigners in political activism in Hong Kong. Your reaction to this new law, Senator?
Yeah, I think anyone at this point that travels to Hong Kong, whether it's an American businessman or a Canadian businessman or anything for that matter, is out of their minds. What this basically says now, that law now says that whether you're a Chinese citizen or a resident in Hong Kong or not, if you have said things or done things critical of the Chinese government and you step foot on Hong Kong, they now reserve the right to arrest you. And being arrested by the Chinese authorities is not like being arrested by American authorities. I mean, you can be put in indefinite detention. Obviously, it's not going to be a real trial. In fact, there are 2 Canadian businessmen right now who are being charged with espionage, and it's being used as retribution against Canada for the arrest and attempt to extradite one of the leaders of Huawei. So obviously a very dangerous development here, but I think it signals the beginning, if not an acceleration of the end of Hong Kong as a global center for finance and commerce.
Well, Senator, when is this going to stop, and how is this going to stop? I mean, clearly, the Chinese Communist Party has been using this pandemic as cover to gain more ground. They invaded India the other day. 20 soldiers in India are dead. They've been militarizing the South China Sea now for years after saying that they wouldn't, and now this overreach in Hong Kong. And most people don't realize that even if you're not a resident of Hong Kong, Article 38 says that foreigners who support independence for Hong Kong for imposing sanctions on the Chinese government could be prosecuted upon entering Hong Kong or mainland China. Is the rest of the world with the United States in seeing this law and the impact of it?
Yeah, you asked when is it going to stop? It isn't going to stop. The Chinese government under President Xi has basically made a decision. They're going to put the pedal to the metal on this. They view themselves not just as a rising power, but destined to be the world's most powerful country. And they're not hiding that anymore. I mean, it used to be they're going to, hide their strength and bide their time. Now they're just pushing hard. So whether it's in India, whether it's intimidation of Taiwan, whether it's what they've done in Hong Kong right now, they're moving forward hard. And so we need to be prepared for that. And I hope the rest of the world, look, yes, the rest of the world realizes what's happening here. I think for different reasons, some are more vocal about it than others. Many of these countries, of course, depend on China for commerce and trade and are afraid to be cut off. And they've shown the willingness to threaten people with that. Some of these countries owe them a bunch of money. And so it's debt trap diplomacy where they can't say too much or they're going to lose because of they're leveraged because of the amount of money they owe. And in some of these countries, they just flat out bribe the government officials into silence and acquiescence. So this is a major challenge.
That's the whole point, right, Senator? Because the Chinese Communist Party will go into small countries in Africa and, by the way, throughout Europe as well and say, look, we'll give you Huawei telecom infrastructure for free. You can owe us. You can pay us later. And then immediately they become indebted to the Chinese Communist Party and they have to roll over with things like this. I mean, that's one of the strategies. So the Federal Communications Commission yesterday, late in the day, taking action against Huawei and ZTE, the FCC designating both as national security threats. That means these companies cannot use federal funds to purchase equipment from either Huawei or ZTE. It follows India's ban on nearly 60 Chinese mobile apps, including TikTok and others. Is this appropriate? Are these moves appropriate? And what's the impact?
Yeah, they're not only appropriate, they're long overdue. And just to go back to the point you made, it's not just Huawei. I mean, they'll go into a country and say, we're going to build you a port. And the president of that country, that makes them look good. We're going to get a port built, and maybe there's a little bit of money on the side for them as well. Of course, what happens years later is you can't pay them what you owe them, so they take over the port. And it's their companies and their workers they bring into your country to do this. This is especially true in Africa. We see it a little bit in Latin America and in developing countries around the world. And it's a major problem. Look, I think this is all waking up to this is long overdue. Credit to this administration. It's the first administration that sort of takes this thing on. But this is going to be the work of a generation. This is going to be the work of multiple administrations. I hope we're now waking up to this reality and begin to take action.
Well, AG Bill Barr, I was on the show last week, and he told me that one of the problems are companies, American companies, looking at the growth in China and saying, look, we got to get growth. We got to sell our widgets to 1.4 billion people in China. They're using their short-term profit motives ahead of national security for America. Is that part of it? Do you think the corporate sector
There's no doubt
needs
about
to
it.
wake up to the national security threats?
Yeah, look, there's two things at play here. Number one is a lot of these multinational companies who have zip codes in the United States but are really multinationals, and they've got their supply chains tied or their manufacturing tied into China. They've invested in it, and that they understand long term that's bad for them, but the people in charge of those companies aren't going to be around long term. They're thinking about short term. And the second piece of it is they do want access to that market. They want access to the billion Chinese, and they have hope, that they're going to one day be able to sell things to them. In fact, many of these companies, depending on who we're talking about, have embedded in their stock price and in their valuation the anticipation that they will one day have some access to the Chinese market. So absolutely, there are multinational companies who are participating and cooperating with China because they want access.
All right. Real quick on your bill, you are launching a bill to give refugee status to Hong Kong residents at risk of persecution under the China's new national security law. We've got 45 million people having filed for unemployment benefits. We've got lots of pressure in this country. How do you answer skeptics or critics who say, how could you have a bill to bring in refugees from Hong Kong, knowing what they're facing, yes, but do we really have the availability here with all the pressure on jobs for Americans?
Yeah, I mean, Hong Kong is not even, it's a city. So we're talking about a very small number of people, frankly. I mean, too many that face persecution, but you have to be able to face persecution. You have to have proven that you have well-founded fear of persecution. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands of people here. I mean, this is a small place, and it's the least we can do because they are going. I'm going to tell you right now, the next thing that's going to happen here within hours, if not days, is they are going to go after and arrest a bunch of these people we know well that are pro-democracy activists. That is going to happen.
Wow. And we're going to be speaking with Jimmy Lai in just a few moments. Before you go, Senator, the Senate extended the application deadline for the Paycheck Protection Program to August 8th, coming just hours before it was set to expire with more than $130 billion in allocated funds unused. What do we need to get this economy up and moving again? Is this working, the PPP plan?
Well, it is working. I think most of the companies that are going to benefit from it have already utilized it. I don't expect you're going to see $130 billion fly out in the next 6 weeks, but it could help a few companies. The most important thing we need to do is come back with that money that's left over and target smaller businesses with restart funds. But ultimately, it's important to remind everybody, there is no government program we can construct here that can replace a functioning economy. It's important people to understand that. We need to get the economy going again at some point. We can't replace the economy with a government program. We can help lower the pain, but we can't replace it.